Afternoon, everyone. I am here with Dan McCarthy. Dan is a military veteran and a big supporter of scouting. Dan, it's great to have you here.
So it's a pleasure to be here.
Uh, Dan, can you give us a little bit of your scouting background?
Well, I joined scouting as a Cub Scout in 1955, probably before most of the parents of the scouts of today were born. I've been in scouting ever since, so this is actually my 65th year in scouting. I've operated at the local, council, district, national, regional levels in various capacities over the years. And with the Order of the Arrow, I currently serve as the vice chairman for unit chapter and lodge support.
That's great. And how about your military background? Can you give us a little information about that?
Sure, I'm if you're familiar with the Navy, I'm what the Navy refers to as a supply corps officer. I spent 38 years as the Navy in the Navy. Five tours of that were afloat on various ships, a couple of amphibious ships, helicopter carrier, a nuclear submarine tender, and recommissioned the battleship Missouri, which, if you know your history, is the one that ended World War II in the Pacific. And the surrender of Japan was conducted on board that ship. I retired as the Deputy Chief of Naval Operations for Fleet Readiness and Logistics in the Pentagon, which means I was a three-star Vice Admiral at the time.
That's excellent. Thank you again for your service. Question from a scout, Mark in Stratford. He is interested to know where you've been stationed throughout your military career.
Oh, well, goodness. As you can imagine, with 38 years in the Navy, it's been all over the place. I've been in 13 different scout councils as a result, served in every region. And it's varied from, Tidewater Council in Norfolk, Virginia area, over to San Diego, up to Monterey, into Newport, Rhode Island, into Northeast Georgia, over into Pearl Harbor and the Aloha Council, out in Guam, up in Seattle. So it's been lots of different places. That's what makes scouting so exciting.
That's great. So, of all the places you've been stationed, which place is your favorite?
A lot of people have asked me that question, and I guess my answer typically is they all are. I mean, I find exciting things at every place that I've been. I've enjoyed every station I've been. I honestly think scouting's a good part of that. One of the things I often tell military people is the beauty of scouting is you can walk into any scout office, regardless of where you're stationed, and say you want to help, and they'll always have something for you to do, and you'll immediately have a family to be part of. So it's made both my military and scouting career very exciting.
Oh, that's great to hear. So, what made you decide to go into the military?
Well, at the time, we were in the midst of Vietnam, and I was just coming out of college and was debating, if you will, how I could serve. And in this case, I had a good friend who was a naval officer at the time who encouraged me to join the Navy. I had been working in business basically to get myself through college in the retail industry. And the Supply Corps are kind of the business managers of the Navy. And so it was a natural fit for me. So I went to the Navy and said I'd like to become a Supply Corps officer. And that just led to what I thought was going to be 2 years of service and ended up 38 because I had so much fun doing it.
It's great to hear. Sure. Another question from a scout, Thomas in Milford. He was interested to know how many people were under your command.
Well, it depends. As you would expect, in various different command capacities, you have different amounts of people. The most I had under my command was when I served as what today would be referred to as the chief operating officer of the Defense Logistics Agency, which at that time I had 30,000 people working for me in a budget of about $60 billion.
Oh, geez, that's a lot. Uh, I would imagine being in charge of that much money and that many people posed some difficulties. What were some of the challenges that you had in that role?
Well, I would say, obviously, any time in the defense business, there's always challenges to deal with, and timing is everything. But I guess I'd stress that anytime you're operating, and it's no different in a scout unit, as it is in a monstrous organization such as that. You depend on the people that are with you and supporting you. So your job as a leader is to ensure that they're properly supported and have the tools and the capability to be successful, and then to help remove barriers. And you can do that at any scale as you get older and you mature and become involved in opportunities at higher levels. It does expand the number of people you're involved with, but it doesn't change the fundamentals of leadership that you learn in scouting.
So, in your experience, can you tell the difference between those who've been involved in the scouting program and those who had in your experience in the military?
Oh, yes. I think Bob Gates used to say that everything he learned, and for those of you that don't know Bob Gates, former national president, but also former Secretary of Defense and former head of the CIA at one point in time. But Bob used to always say that every leadership skill he learned was in scouting. And you can tell. I mean, people that are involved in scouting, they all identify themselves. I would go, as you'd imagine, in the military at my level, you spend a lot of time in social gatherings, and inevitably the subject of scouting would come up. And you can immediately tell those that have been in scouting and have had that experience and the advantage that it's given them.
Yeah, that's great to hear. So, did you have a lot of opportunity to work with the Robert Gates throughout your career then?
Yes, both in scouting and out. When he was the Secretary of Defense, I was serving in the Pentagon at the time, so I did see him then. But before that, when he was in the CIA, I was involved in scouting opportunities with him. So I've been associated with him on and off throughout his scouting background.
That's great to hear. Another question from a scout. This one is from Stephen Hamden, and he is interested to know which medals or citations are you most honored to have received and why?
So in a military career, you're recognized often at the end of your tours for the things that you do and the contributions you make to the success of your organization. I would stress, as I mentioned before, that although the leader tends to get the recognition is a result of the operations that have gone on throughout his or her service and the accomplishments that have been made by the folks that work for him. I was fortunate enough to be awarded with the Defense Superior Service Medal, which is the highest peacetime medal that can be awarded in the Department of Defense. I have several other awards that were accumulated throughout my career, but that particular one had to do with my service with the Defense Logistics Agency because it is a joint service medal.
Great. So, how has your military service, your military experience affected your life today?
Well, I mean, obviously, anytime you serve in an occupation, whatever occupation, as long as you do, it becomes part of your life. I guess much like scouting, the military service is part of my DNA, if you will. It's been what I've done. Uh, I retired in 2007 from wearing the uniform, but that doesn't mean I'm still not involved in different ways in supporting the military, both occasionally asked to come back and speak to individuals that are still in the community that I used to head when I was chief of supply corps, but also in the commercial world. I sometimes go out and still advise folks that are interacting with the defense establishment in supporting logistics support for military forces. So you never really leave it. It's part of you, like scouting and the lessons of scouting are, they're part of you. So it's not something you just turn off. So I would say they continue to affect me every day.
That's great. So, like yourself, there are plenty of scouts who are interested in becoming members of the military. So, what skills do you think our scouts can work on to be effective members of our military?
So it's all about leadership. I mean, it's all about leadership. And what is scouting? Scouting is an opportunity to learn the skills to survive in the outdoors, clearly, but skills that can support career development, skills that ultimately develop leaders. And as we often say, we're in the business of preparing young people for life, but we're in the business in doing that of developing leaders of character for the future. And what more could any military organization or any commercial organization or civilian organization or nonprofit organization want but to have good high character leaders? And that's what scouting's all about. So I would argue that what we do in scouting every day prepares us for the future and whatever roles we choose.
That's great. So I know that you were very instrumental in the opening of the summit. Is that correct?
Yes, I was the original director of the summit.
That's great. Hey, so what was it like to help plan and build the summit?
So I have to go back a little in time. The whole concept of the summit originated in 2007 when the BSA executive board wanted to explore the idea of whether or not we should leave Fort A.P. Hill, which we'd held jamborees at since 1981, and look for a place of our own for future jamborees. There were various reasons that were causing us to consider that alternative. And I was part of a then committee that recommended to the Boy Scout Executive Board that we actually conduct a search and go look for a place and see if we could find a place of our own. Subsequent to that, I was asked to be part of a four-man team headed by Jack First, who some of you may know, to conduct a solicitation, if you will, for sites. And we ultimately then considered 80 different sites around the continental United States as potential sites for a future National Jamboree site. At the time, we weren't necessarily looking for another high adventure site, but we wanted a site to be able to host our national jamborees for in perpetuity, if you will. As that process narrowed itself, we ultimately decided that the site in West Virginia, what ultimately became the Summit Bechtel Reserve, would be the best site for us, both as a National Jamboree site, but also as a new high adventure site that would support the East Coast more centrally than the sea base does down south. Not to take away from the sea base, each of our high adventure bases has their own advantage and particular focus area. So once they got started building the summit, they asked me if I wouldn't join the profession. I was, up to that point, I was just another volunteer helping. And so I was commissioned a professional and spent 5 years finalizing construction, overseeing the finalization of construction and developing the initial programs to launch the summit, which we opened at the 2013 National Jamboree. So, and the rest is history, as they say.
That's great. So what changes were made from the original vision to when the summit was finished?
Well, I would say you'd have to understand the process through which we built and designed the summit. We brought in world-class experts in high adventure and what I would collectively refer to as extreme sports into a group setting and looked at the property and decided how do we develop this piece of property into a place that can not only camp 30, 40,000 people, but can also deliver the future exciting venues that the youth of today are looking for beyond just what we have traditionally done through the three other high adventure bases. So the concept of the summit became something very different rather than focusing on a single or a primary area like afloat operations down at the sea base or northern tier canoeing or Philmont and the hiking and trekking. The summit was designed to address a whole range of extreme sports. So it's a collection of activities that's unparalleled anywhere in the world. And the scale and scope of what's done there is unparalleled. So I would say as we put the concept together, what we wanted to do, we stuck with the concept that was developed And what you see today is actually what was developed in those early days of brainstorming, if you will, and deciding on how we wanted to utilize that property in a way that would support scouting for the next century.
That's great. Um, so, what were some of the biggest challenges that you and your committee faced when you were putting the summit together?
Well, I wouldn't refer to it as a committee in this case. It was really a team of people that were professionals and contractors that helped put that place together. There were some interesting times, as you might imagine. Some of the nature of the venues that we developed created challenges in and of themselves. Stretching zip lines 3,200 feet across a lake, as an example. But probably the one that was most memorable to me had to do with getting the lakes filled in time for the World Jamboree. West Virginia doesn't have natural lakes, they have lots of rivers, but all their lakes are man-made. So the lakes on the summit are all man-made lakes. So once we created the dams that enabled the lakes to fill, then we had to have the water, which meant enough rain to be collected to fill those lakes. And so probably one of the most uh, anxiety high periods of time was ensuring the lakes were going to be filled for the Jamboree, because we couldn't delay the Jamboree, had to happen on time. And fortunately, it all worked out. But there were some sleepless nights, if you will, while we were waiting for the rain to come.
Was there any time you thought that those lakes weren't going to be filled in time for the jamboree?
I guess from the outset when we started this, we always felt that this was just the right thing. It was the right thing for scouting at this time, and that there was a divine hand ensuring that this place was going to come together when it needed to come together. So I think all of us always had that level of confidence that no matter what it may look like on any given day, it was all going to come together, and it did.
Yeah, it's a beautiful site, and uh, we're glad to have it. So, what would you say is your favorite part of the summit then?
Oh, yeah, but it's a little bit like your question of what's your favorite duty station.
Yeah,
The beauty of the summit is every venue is exciting, whether you're into zip lining or BMX or skateboarding or shooting. Uh, I mean, all of these varies. There's 12 different independent venues on the site that every one is a world class, and every one is designed to allow someone who has never tried that particular sport to be able to go in and learn, as well as someone who's maybe pretty much an expert in the sport can still be challenged to learn even more about the sport. So I think the exciting part about the summit is we would have people come in that would arrive thinking, well, obviously the best thing here is going to be to ride a zip line, and go away thinking, wow, I never knew I could skateboard. And you learn new skills. And all of those are designed to challenge, to push you beyond maybe what you thought your capabilities were, but to do it in a safe way that is exciting and a learning experience at the same time. So I have to say that every one of the venues has its advantages and its benefits. And the beauty of the summit is being able to go to all these different places and really learn, experience, and challenge yourself.
that's great. So, you kind of alluded to it, but there was a large team of volunteers, professionals, and contractors that helped make the summit what it is today. How many people were involved in bringing the summit to fruition?
Well, so at one point in time when we were under construction, we'd have 2,000 people working on the site at any given time, and they'd be working 24 hours a day. So we were moving dirt in the dark. We would literally be moving bulldozers controlled by GPS satellites that would be working all through the night. So you can imagine the level of complexity in taking the main site of the summit is 10,600 acres, taking and reshaping that into what you see today. It didn't look like that when we came to the summit originally. It was pretty much a forested area. So when you look at beautiful lakes and camping areas and that, if you had been there when we first looked at the site, you wouldn't have seen any of that. So there was a tremendous amount of effort that was made to develop the site initially. And then we involved a significant group of volunteers to help take the design, if you will, as I mentioned, that was developed by these world-class companies in each venue case, and now create the programs that were going to be executed on it. And that was a combination of professionals and volunteers that came together that had expertise in those particular sports, and developed the programs that today constitutes what the summit offers. We continue to modify that. The current director, Tom McGregor, has added, and his staff has added new items to the summit's repertoire, if you will. That's exciting. That's why it's such a great place. There's plenty of places to expand and develop new things, and they're doing that, and that excites me.
Mhm. That's great. I'd like to focus now on your more broader scouting experience. So, which role as either a youth or an adult has been your favorite experience in scouting?
Well, I would have to say, as a youth, it was probably being a patrol leader. That first opportunity to be a leader of a group, to experience the challenges, but to also experience the pride, if you will, of success as your team kind of comes together and is successful. And I remember things like Klondike derbies and Camporees that we used to do. We had a strong patrol that were really enthusiastic and involved, and that's fun as a leader when those kind of things happen. I guess the same is true when you think about the adult roles in scouting. Although I've held a number of national roles, I think the one that's been the most rewarding is being scoutmaster. I was scoutmaster of a troop that met on an island on Oahu in Hawaii, and we used to call ourselves the troop, the island troop on an island, and those scouts still remain in touch with me today. This was in the '70s when I was a scoutmaster, and it's hard to compare any experience in scouting with the opportunity to be a scoutmaster, to influence young people, and to have those young people come back and stay connected with you. So yeah, that's probably the best.
That's great. Um, uh, as we're getting close to the end here, would you have any words of advice for our youth or words of inspiration you might offer?
Well, I just try to have to say, what you're doing today, and the experiences you have in scouting will support you the rest of your life. And we've over the years done lots of studies, and there's plenty of evidence to suggest that the longer you stay in scouting, the more benefit there is. And so I encourage every young person, no matter what their role, to take full advantage of the opportunities in scouting, learn as much as you can learn, take on leadership roles. It's the time to try things and experience, because as you get older and your positioned and your profession depends on your success as a leader, you don't have as much flexibility as you did when you were a scout. So use your time in scouting as an opportunity to experiment, to try, maybe to fail at times, and that's okay, but to learn from the failures and continue to develop. Because in the end, as we said when we first started, this is really about developing young people for life. That's what we're about. And if you experience scouting in the way it's intended, then you will be developed for life.
Those are great words. There's again, thank you, Dan, for taking some time to talk with us and our scouts, and we really appreciate your time.
Happy to do it. Good luck.
All right, thank you.
Uh-huh.